You want to know what CRNA school is really like. And I'm here to give you a semester by semester deep dive for what CRNA school is really like. If we haven't met, what's up? My name is Anna. I am now a 5th semester SRNA. That stands for Student Registered Nurse Anesthetist, which is wild because that means that I am more than halfway done with CRNA school. If you haven't come across any of my other stuff before, I have a YouTube channel. This is where I do kind of deep dives about what CRNA school is really like. I do semester by semester breakdowns of what courses I took, what went well, the grades that I achieved, and what I would do differently approaching CRNA school. Before CRNA school, was a travel nurse for about 2 years. I worked in California, San Diego, Pomona area, San Jose for 2 contracts, and then also Seattle and Portland. I was a staff nurse at Johns Hopkins in their CV-SICU. And in 2020, when I was working as a pandemic COVID travel nurse, I started making content and really connected with a lot of you. I started out on TikTok, and that is where I met my now business partner, Chrissy CRNA. You might know her as. And together we saw that there's just such a gap for information and education for critical care out there. So together we started Confident Care Academy, which is this comprehensive pharmacology and pathophysiology membership where we upload monthly lectures about pharmacology, pathophysiology, travel nursing, getting into CRNA school. And if you're not ready for the membership, definitely check out the podcast. We have all sorts of podcast episodes, everything from like getting into CRNA school, loans, whether CRNA school, grad school loans are worth it, heart failure, managing code blues, sleeping as a night shift nurse, all that stuff. Definitely check out the Confident Care Academy podcast. But this is my personal channel where I just kind of talk about my experiences as a student registered nurse anesthetist, SRNA. And today I'm giving a semester recap of semester 4 of CRNA school, which is crazy that it's already gone by so quickly. Make sure that you stay till the end of the video. The end of the video is where I talk about what I would do differently approaching semester 4 of CRNA school. But today we're going to go over what classes I took, how the grades ended up, what went well, and what I would continue doing, and what I would do differently if I was to start over for semester 4 of CRNA school. Please like and subscribe. It really helps me out, and YouTube helps me pay some of my bills. So it would help me take out less student loans. I really appreciate the support on YouTube, and let's just dive into it. What classes did I take in semester 4 of CRNA school? So the classes that I took were Advanced Physiology and Pathophysiology, semester 2, Anesthesia Principles 1, Simulation and Lab 1, and Pharmacology 1. This was a heavy semester. And before we get into talking a little bit more about the classes, let's go over the grades that I got, because I know that I would have cared about that as someone who was applying to school. So in Anesthesia Principles 1, I got a B+, which is 83 or an 86 to 89%. Anesthesia Lab 1, I got an A. Advanced Physiology, I got an A-. And Pharmacology 1, I got an A-. So let's talk a little bit more about which classes we took and then what the kind of program structure is like for my school. So I am in a front-loaded CRNA school, which means that I take all of my didactic classes before I start clinical. The other program structure is an integrated program structure, which is where you're taking your didactic classes while you are in clinical. If it comes down to it and you get into a CRNA school, I wouldn't choose one program over another because one is front-loaded and one is integrated. I will say that I do like being in a front-loaded program because anesthesia is so foreign. Even if you are working in the ICU, you're definitely not familiar with like OB and placing epidurals and spinals. And I think that for me, I really enjoy being front loaded because I get to really kind of sink my fingers fully into all of the material and really kind of soak it up before I step into the OR. On the flip side, the other argument is that it is helpful to be in the OR and seeing in real life the same things as you're learning them. I think that there's pros and cons to both program structures. I'm enjoying my front loaded program in part because my faculty prioritizes shadowing. So while I am in a front-loaded program, I'm also in the OR. Those cases just don't count towards my hours. And I will make a video in the future talking about how many cases we have to get in CRNA school, what type of specialty cases we get, and then how to prep for clinical, all of that stuff. Definitely subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be making those videos as I dive into my next semester, which is when I start clinical, which is crazy. It's only 3 months away that I'm going to be full-time in the OR. But anyway, I am in a front-loaded program, meaning I take all of my didactic classes before I start counting cases in the operating room. So anesthesia principles, let's start with that. That is the class that is the bulk of the anesthesia training. And it was hard. As we're looking at grades, in the last video I made talking about my semester recaps, as I'm in didactic classes, I talked a little bit about how making a 98% on all of the exams is not the top priority for me. What's the top priority for me is understanding the material and performing to a degree where I'm personally happy with. I'm happy with like an 88 to like a 92%. That works for me. I'm probably not going back to grad school after this. And if I am, I don't need a 4.0. So, and anything that I would do after this would be potentially like legal, like law school and or maybe some research. But again, I don't have to have a 4.0 to have any of those pursuits. So I think that the fixation on grades is something that is really hard for a lot of SRNAs to let go of. And I will say this, especially for SRNAs who are in a front-loaded program, sometimes they have a hard time letting go of attaching their self-worth to their grades. I see people who have like, who are making like the 96, 98% on every exam, like they're not working out, they're not sleeping well, they're not really taking care of themselves. So I definitely think that there's a balance there. I think that, you know, if you're making an 89% on some of these exams, and then you also got to call your mom and go on a walk, to me, that's a win. I think that self-care and balance in CRNA school is really important. And I try to approach it from that sort of perspective. I will say this, in my anesthesia principles class and my pharmacology class, the grade was exclusively based off of your exam performance. So there weren't group presentations, there weren't papers, there weren't these buffer assignments. So there's a lot of anxiety that can come with that, right? Because your grades are exclusively from how you do on exams. I can make a whole separate video about self-talk and kind of mental health in CRNA school. Please comment if that's something that y'all are interested in, because it can be very stressful to enter into an exam knowing that the thing that you've worked towards for the past like 8 years is on the line if you like don't perform well on an exam. Like that can be very stressful. All that being said, yeah, for me, I'm very happy with my grades. I'm happy that I was able to also incorporate time for hobbies. I was able to incorporate time to shadow in the operating room. And that kind of leads into the next point. I'm going to talk about studying and resources that worked for these core anesthesia classes. So point number 2 of the video is talking about resources that I found really helpful and things that worked as a full-time SRNA. So first up, let's talk about physiology and pathophysiology. Was a course that to me ended up making a lot of sense. I think that nurses inherently come in with a pretty solid background to pathophysiology and physiology, particularly the respiratory and cardiac systems. I will say that endocrine was like pretty new to me. But this one was something that I felt like it came pretty naturally. And a few of the resources that I used that I really liked, in addition to just the course textbook, were It's Ninja Nerd, and those are YouTube videos. I think those are super helpful for that cellular level pathophysiology and physiology. Also, Medicosis Perfectionalis is another YouTube resource that I found to be super helpful for phys and pathophys. So those 2 resources I'll link below. They're just free YouTube channels. So for pharmacology is where it starts to get a bit more advanced, I'll say. I think that for pharmacology, an approach that really worked was listening to the Nagelhout lectures on YouTube before class. So I'll also link that in the description down below. Nagelhout has a YouTube channel. He is now retired, but he's a CRNA, I believe, at Cal State Fullerton / Kaiser. And he like wrote one of the textbooks for, I mean, you know, like if you're an SRNA, you have Nagelhout, and he has lectures on YouTube. So definitely check out those lectures. And I will also say this, if you look at what his syllabus is and you have a pharmacology course that kind of mirrors that progression of pharmacology, it can be helpful to listen to the last lecture in a series where he goes over the review for the exam. I will always listen to that first, and then I go back and listen to the other lectures, and then I start my reading from there. So I essentially kind of focus my studies, and I focus on the areas where I know that I'm likely to be tested on, and then build out my knowledge from there. So I don't end up getting caught in the weeds. And then again, the Nagelhout free lectures are also going to be listed in the description. And then after I listen to the Nagelhout lectures, which I like to hot girl walk and listen to those lectures, and that is almost like, it kind of doubles as self-care time because I'm able to get outside, I'm able to go on a little walk. The lectures are about an hour and a half each, which is like a perfect length for just like a nice walk. And that serves as kind of like the basis for the understanding for for the pharmacology. And then from there, I like to go in and I do all of the apex modules with the pharmacology that are going to correlate with the pharmacology that we're studying. And then from there, I go through and I do a ton of practice questions. And those practice questions, I do a combination of anesthesia and anesthesia. You may have to ask around and or make your own Anki decks. I will also link in the description below Ali Abdal's free series on the how to learn and how to set up Anki. Those are Skillshare classes that are super worth it to take. And I can't recommend those Skillshare classes enough. And then from there, I will supplement with practice questions from Miller and with Prodigy Anesthesia. I'll do correlated practice questions from there. And then I will supplement from further textbook readings. I know Stolting Pharmacology is on his way out. I'm really excited for Ria's pharmacology textbook that she's writing. If you haven't checked her out, she is a CRNA scientist and she's writing a pharmacology textbook with some other people. Anyway, but lots of different practice questions. This is all a little bit of a broad surface level overview. Definitely check out the YouTube video where I talk about building out a study guide for CRNA school, because I think a lot of people get lost in the weeds of, oh my gosh, do I really have to read 5 different textbooks? The answer is yes, you do have to read 5 textbooks, and that's just the way it is. But don't worry, I'll make a YouTube video, and if I don't know which one is going to go up first, this one or that one, but definitely just come back to the YouTube channel and subscribe. And if it's not this video, it'll be the next video about how I build out a study guide as a student registered nurse anesthetist and how I kind of sort between all of the materials. And what works for me might not work for you, but I've finally figured out a way to not waste time just floundering between all the materials. Anyway, come back to that video. Next is anesthesia principles. Anesthesia principles is the hardest class to study for because it is so broad. And anesthesia principles includes a lot of new topics that you didn't necessarily cover or touch at all as an ICU nurse. The example again would be OB, right? Like if you're an ICU nurse, you don't know how to place a spinal. You don't know the ligamentum flavum. You don't know about the epidural space really. Like you might have touched a little bit about the thoracic epidurals if you're a CTICU nurse, but or a trauma nurse, but there's a lot in anesthesia principles that's new, like the equipment that you're using, the size blades, a Mac versus a Miller, how you do the a retrograde intubation, all that stuff is brand new to you. So it's just a ton of material. What I ended up finding works the best for me is as my pre-reading for class, starting with Morgan and McHale, because it's kind of like a broad overview. So I'll try to skim the chapter of Morgan and McHale that's correlated before the class. And then I will start on the apex modules that correlate with the material we're covering in class before I go into class. And then when I go into class, I will record the lecture and I record and take notes on notability. And again, I'm going to go through step by step how I build out a study guide in the next YouTube video. Please comment if you want to see that, and then please subscribe to the channel and then comment and support and boost and share, because all of that helps me out a lot. Love you guys. But I'm going to do a whole video on this, but I'm just kind of talking surface level right now. So to start, Morgan and McHale pre-reading, apex modules pre-reading, then in class, taking notes of notability and recording the lecture, because inevitably the professors are going to say something that is not in the slides and it's not in any of the sources, and it'll show up on an exam. So you want to record that lecture and then take notes. And then from there, I go and I finish the correlating apex modules that correlate with the lecture. And then from there, I will do reading in Nagelhout. And then from there, I would then build the study guide as a combination between the slides and apex. And I will supplement with the tables in Nagelhout, because Nagelhout has helpful tables in terms of equipment specifically. And the pharmacology tables in Nagelhout are very helpful. And then from there, I will copy that study guide and then make a blank copy and a filled out copy. And I will fill out the study guide from beginning to end. And then from there, I will do practice questions with Prodigy and Anki. And then all of that together, you mix it all together. I don't know if I can sing on YouTube without getting a copyright claim. You know what I'm talking about though. Hannah Montana. You get the best of all worlds. You have to use all of the different sources. So that is how I will study. And again, I'm going to make a whole YouTube video about how to build out a study guide, how I build out a study guide anyway. Next point that I'm going to talk about is what I am happy with from semester 4. Point number 3, what am I happy with finishing up semester 4 of CRNA school? The first thing that I'm happy with is my grades. I'm stoked with that. I do not need to make 96% in every single class. And I'm glad that I accommodated within my schedule enough time to pursue hobbies. I started taking dance classes again. I might insert footage of me taking dance classes. I am hiking. I am spending time with friends. I am making videos. I am learning the craft of anesthesia. I am stoked. I'm very happy happy, and I have fully let go of the need to make like a 98% on all of these exams. So I'm very happy with it. I encourage people who are coming after me to also make peace with not needing to make straight A's on everything, because at the end of the day, making a 96% versus a 90 is not really going to make you a better CRNA. And I challenge you to sit with that. And I challenge you to take care of yourself. And if you can make time for your family, for your friends, and for like eating healthy foods and grocery shopping and make 100% on everything, go you. Most people sacrifice self-care in order to get like 2 points higher on an exam. And I would just argue at the end of the day that that doesn't matter. And I was told that verbatim by my program director. On day one, he came in and he was like, hey guys, I don't care if you make an 86 or a 94. I don't care. I want for you guys to be safe CRNAs. I want for you to have a hunger for knowledge. And I want for you to try to practice self-care if you can. He was like, this is your terminal degree. This is a doctorate degree. Most of you are not going back to graduate school after this point. You've all been very high academic performers to get to this point, and we do have a high standard here. You do have to maintain like high B's, low A's to maintain a status in the program, but none of us care if you make an 87 or a 92. So I encourage you to let go of that. And that's so freeing. If you can let go of needing to make a 98 on everything, I encourage you to do that. So I am happy with my grades, stoked about that. Moving on to the next thing. The next thing I'm stoked about is the time management techniques that I've come up with. Definitely check out the video down below or above where I talk about setting up my calendar for the year and using Trello. Trello is a tool that I use all the time just for my day-to-day to-do list. I love it. And I'll also comment if you want me to make a video specifically about all the technology that I use in CRNA school, about like citation sources and time management. So comment if you want like a technology review for CRNA school, and I would love to make that video for you guys. The next thing I'm happy with is the time that I spent shadowing. So my program has the opportunity while you're in didactic to shadow faculty members in the OR, and at their discretion, we are hands-on during that time. It just does not count towards our overall clinical hours. So I have already intubated patients. I placed LMAs. I spend time shadowing in outpatient orthopedic centers where I observe a lot of nerve blocks. So I think that this is really going to help hopefully decrease kind of that barrier jumping from didactic to clinical. It's good to just be exposed to the OR setting where I'm just like doing the anesthesia machine check, like getting over even just like pulling up meds again, right? Because you get to be all thumbs after like a year away. So I'm glad that I've spent time in the OR. And I'll also say this, like, I think that the time that I've spent shadowing a lot of my different faculty members has been like more worth it than making 3 points higher on an exam. Again, that's just me personally. This next semester, I'm going to shadow even more. I've now set up and credentialed at 2 more facilities, which I'm really stoked about. I'll definitely ask, like during your interview, if you have the opportunity to shadow while you're in your didactic session, like your didactic portion of your program, if that's an option for you. But I'm really happy that I've been able to kind of be exposed to the OR a little bit while I am still in my didactic era. The next thing that I'm really happy with finishing up semester 4 was that I made time to spend time on professional development. I went to the AANA mid-year conference and the AANA annual conference in DC and Seattle. That is so worth it. If it's possible for you guys to set aside some money while you are still a travel nurse to allocate funds so that you can travel to either mid-year or the annual conference, I can 100% recommend it. If you're a student, I really recommend the mid-year conference. That's where you're going to learn a lot about the politics of anesthesia. We had the opportunity to meet with congressional staffers, and I spoke with congressional staffers about the topics that are related to the CRNA profession, expanding access to care for our veterans, backing the ICANN Act. And I was surprised that as a student, there was so much catered education to us specifically so that we could really become involved in leadership within the profession. And working with the CRNA from the state that I am in, I ended up introducing and meeting with the congressional staffers and actually vocalizing those points myself to the congressional staffer. I think that this is something that is super helpful for us all to understand. A lot of people don't know the difference between opt-out and independent practice. And a lot of people think that if you're not in an opt-out state, you can't practice independently. That's not correct. That's wrong. So there's a lot of just stuff to do with the politics of anesthesia that I definitely recommend y'all really invest in, because at the end of the day, anesthesia is an aging workforce. course. And I think that as the next generation who are stepping into leadership, it's huge for us to really understand the profession that we are becoming a part of so that we can expand access to care for our patients and also advocate for ourselves as well. Completely recommend going to AANA, especially mid-year while you're a student, because I think that's really going to help you understand a lot of the differences between like the QZ billing, the QZ modifier, and independent practice, opt-out, VA practice, all this good stuff. 100% recommend going to DC. And then annual conference is so cool. It's much bigger and that's more clinically focused, but often if you're at a W-2 job, they're going to send you to annual conference as a part of your education dollars anyway. So I say if you can only make one conference, go to mid-year while you are in school, because you're just going to learn so much about the politics of anesthesia. And then the next thing is talking about what I would do differently if I were to do semester 4 all over again.